Welcome to the year eight Road to Glory recap. All right, draft recap of last Friday. Thank you to everyone who joined. We had a little up in the ante for the draft this year with the rings. That's right. I know Jack Nihill's wearing his ring right now. I know we got Japes got his hanging up. Um, and Evan's got his new custom one. So, like we said at the table. Um, as of now, the loser of the league is going to be responsible for buying the winner's ring. We're going with that for now. I feel like that one's, it's manageable. Um, we all agreed here, so we're gonna run with that now. Um, when the time comes, we'll deal with that. The ring will just, have to have, my approval just because we want it to look good like the other ones. Um, so when the time comes, we'll deal with that, but that was established. Um, so we're running with that for now. Um, just to have something. All right, so this is probably one of the most interesting drafts we've had. Um, you know, entering Travis Hunter into this picture, through the draft, for a loop, since we'll have the first offensive and defensive player that can be played at both wide receiver and corner. So it's definitely a shift in the draft. I will be going through, I'm not going to go through the entirety of, the whole draft. Um, but I will be going through everyone's teams, what Yahoo thinks that they reached on, what their best value pick was. But there were definitely some key parts of the draft that I wanted to cover here. So, obviously, we had our draft order. We had Nihil, Gligo, me, Miranda, Brett, McGill, Andrew, Japes, Ethan, Evan. We had our keepers. Everyone's keepers were established. Obviously, keepers play a big role in draft strategy. And risks you can take in the earlier rounds, whether it's going with the quarterback here like Ethan did, Brett taking Travis Hunter. So there were definitely some risks, even though I wouldn't say Josh Allen's a risk, but with just how quarterbacks are valued, um, it seemed like he could afford to make a move like this, with how, deep the keepers were. So we had Nihil selected Bijan number one overall. I was, I did think it would be funny. There was a point for a long time where I thought Nihil was going to draft Saquon, um, just because of the year he was coming off. Obviously, it's going to be hard for him to repeat. However, I just think he's in a run heavy offense. They high scoring team. Obviously, I don't expect him to get the touches that he got last year. However, I think Bijan has, a wicked high ceiling. I feel like their offense became more explosive when Penix entered the picture. Obviously, Bijan is an ideal receiving back as well. He should be having 60 plus catches this year, I would think. Um, weak division that they play in. So it became the consensus with Jamar out of the picture that Bijan was definitely going to be the number one, but I was honestly hoping he would take Saquon just to piss Gallego off. Um, but yeah, so obviously then Gallego finally captures Saquon. He'll probably be his keeper next year too. You know, wouldn't expect less. Um, I ended up keeping Jamar. I feel like I tried to plant some thoughts into people's heads that I didn't know what I was doing, but I never considered anyone else. Um, Miranda picked Gibbs. I thought that one was a straightforward one as well, just with him having Achane. Um, his running backs would be out of the picture now, even though Achane, there is some injury concerns, so I thought that made that pick more obvious. And then Brett, kind of came out with the shocker, I would say through the last week leading up to the draft. I feel like we initially thought he was going to get McCaffrey. That was until McGill announced that he was keeping McCaffrey. Um, and Brett has a tendency to pick running backs in the first round if you look through his drafts. And just his strategy, a running back didn't make sense there just because of how his plan was laid out with Travis Hunter. So Genty going definitely a little bit higher. Um, than we had initially thought. Um, I think he's a really good player. He should be getting a lot of touches. Um, I don't see any competition in the backfield with him, so he could be an all three down back. So I'm not mad at the pick. Um, if I was in that spot, would I have picked him? Probably not, but I could understand it from Brett's drafting position. And then McGill, kind of with the shock leading up to that week, was keeping McCaffrey at the deadline. Um, we had Andrew backstab Jettis, absolute backstabbing to take CD Lamb. I would say Lamb going into this year is the safer pick. Um, you know, Dak healthy. I think Pickens will help him a little bit. I think the issue for CD last year is that obviously, Dak gets hurt here and there. I feel good about Dak this year, um, but CD needs to get more touchdowns this year. And then Justin was able to get Jefferson at 8. It could definitely be a huge boomer bust pick. I mean, Jettis is kind of QB, like it doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball. I actually don't think McCarthy will be that bad. I'm more concerned about his hamstring, just because it seems like every year something seems to happen with that. Um, but if hamstring's good, I think he'll be awesome this year. And then Ethan Amon-Ra, another safe pick, 100 plus catches. I don't think them missing Ben Johnson will affect him hitting that criteria. Um, So I think Amon-Ra was another safe pick. Nico Collins for Evan. I think Evan got exactly what he was looking for. Um, he got Nico, and then he was able to get Neighbors at the turnaround. So he's got three tier one receivers off the bat. Obviously, we had Nico, who was on pace to lead the league in yards until he got hurt last year. Malik Neighbors gets improvement at quarterback. I actually think Jackson Dart should be the starter. With how he's looked. And I think he'd be better for Neighbors. I don't know. It's just something about Wilson doesn't, throws me off. I don't know. And then another big shot here was Allen going two to Ethan, like I had said. Um, Allen, Allen and Lamar, the two top tier QBs by far. Obviously, the reigning MVP here. I felt like was it a little early? Yes. However, playing devil's advocate, um, Allen was not going to make it back to Ethan, so that was his chance to take him, and he did. And then Japes and Andrew were able to get, I believe, two players that they were hoping. And definitely, I believe both of them did not initially think these two players, weeks prior to the draft, we're going to be there. We were all talking about Puka being a first round pick, um, potentially Henry as well. So I believe that they got two players that they believed were worthy of first round picks in round two. I was actually shocked by McGill taking Jonathan Taylor. That one I actually didn't see coming. Um, with Allen getting picked. I wasn't really sure where McGill was gonna go. Um, so that one I personally didn't see coming, and I think Brett probably would have considered taking Taylor if he had fell to him. So thank you, McGill. And then obviously biggest pick probably of the draft, Travis Hunter going round two to Brett. Projected 15 points. Can put him at corner. Could could be a huge advantage for Brett if he gets those offensive touches. And then we had Miranda taking Drake London. If London had fallen to me, I was definitely pulling the trigger on him. So damn you, Miranda, stealing all my picks. But then I was able to get Jacobs. He was someone that I didn't expect to be there. My whole plan going into the draft was probably taking AJ Brown. Um, but I couldn't pass up on a running back who had 15 touchdowns last year, in a decent scoring offense. So, and then we had Deligo having AJ Brown fall to him, so he's got double eagle. We'll see how that goes. We know Brown was dealing with a hammy, but I mean, I've seen videos of him at practice. He should be good to go. It's more so, are they going to throw the ball more than they did last year? And then we have Nihil with the turnaround taking JSN and Tyreek. So JSN coming off, what do you have, 100 catches last year? Obviously, new QB, kind of new offensive scheme with Kubiak. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, they unloaded DK and Lockett. They did bring in Cup, but Jason should be the main guy there. So I just wanted to go through those two rounds. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every round just because I will be going over everyone's teams and who they had taken. Um, so yeah, so let's just go through the teams here. Actually, you know what? We'll do it this way. All right. So Nihil with the first pick, he had Bijan, um, Bijan, Jason, Tyreek. Tyreek, another interesting, boomer bust. Um, feel like he is dependent on Tua just with how the offense is run. I'm not really worried about him being injured at all. I'm more worried about Tua. Um, so yeah, I mean, if he was there in round three, I probably would have taken him. So, I can't say anything against that pick. James Conner, another great running back. He was coming off of a great year. I know that they are saying that Trey Benson is going to take, some of his snaps away from, a heavy workload. I think that's okay. I still think Connor, will get the bulk of everything. So, and I think he's a good, he's not like an elite, but he's a good receiving back. So, and then T. Higgins, the keeper for Nihil. I think that's a great third receiver to have. As long as he still stays healthy, Bengals are going to be playing from behind. Most likely they'll be in shootouts just because of their defense. And then Pacheco, I think that's a sneaky good pick. Um, I think that is a sneaky good pick because, last year he was being drafted as round two value. Obviously, he broke his leg. Um, but he's still like he's more explosive than Kareem Hunt. Like I don't think there'll be any problem with Pacheco getting back in. We've seen how good he's looked in the preseason. So obviously a better receiving back. Um, I feel like that's good value for him. Potentially he could end up, going back to that 2 to 3 round value. So I think that was a good pick. And we have Hawkinson. He's another one. Obviously he came back late in the year, off what was it, the ACL. Definitely one of the better tight ends. The Vikings, outside of Jefferson, and then obviously we have Addison being suspended. Um, Hawkinson's definitely going to be a top target for JJ. Um, So yeah, I don't mind that pick, especially having him as a tight end one. I think that's a good pick. And then we have Juwan Jennings. They're saying he's probably gonna play week one, and from, personal experience having him last year, he ended up being like my wide receiver too. Obviously they don't have Ayuk. They'll have Ricky Pearsall, who I think will ultimately end up becoming the wide receiver one in Ayuk's absence. But Juwan Jennings definitely became a huge red zone threat and third down receiver for them. So could be another steal there. And then obviously Drake May coming in, being the QB1 for Nihil. He's looked good. I would say his passing, hasn't looked elite in the preseason, but also he hasn't played that many drives. His rushing, definitely. I think that's gonna escalate him in fantasy, especially for playing a whole year now. Um, he can make plays with his legs, and I think that's crucial when it comes to, fantasy. And then obviously down here we got, Tank Bigsby could be another big insurance pick, if they decide to move from ETN again or if he goes down. Mooney, wide receiver two in Atlanta. Keenan Allen coming back with the Chargers could be a sneaky good pick here too. We have Ayuk. Okay, so he's got Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. Obviously, that gives him an extra roster spot. Um, and then, we have our defensive players, kickers, and all that fun stuff. I'm not really going to go over the defensive players a lot just because, I mean, we know their impact and value. So, I mean, obviously, you took Zach Bond in the 11th. He was, one of the better linebackers last year. So, yeah. So then after I go through all these, I will go through like what Yahoo graded everyone as. Um, so we have Galigo here, Saquon and AJ Brown, dual Eagles. We'll see how that works out. I mean, if that was my picks as well, I probably would have went with that. Um, Trey McBride, making a name for himself here at the turn for the third round. He had what? How many catches did he have last year? Was he around 100 too? 100, but what did he have? Like 2 to 3 touchdowns. If he becomes a touchdown focus in that offense, he will definitely be a top three tight end. Even though he's already being drafted at 2 right now. So I like him going into this year. Obviously, Jaden Daniels in round 4. I was debating on him. I was just more so hoping for Hurts. Um, Daniels obviously coming off one of the best rookie QB seasons that we've seen. Obviously, he is a very good rushing quarterback, which gave him so much upside in fantasy last year. The only question people I think are having is can he repeat that? Will he have a sophomore slump, kind of like Stroud? Um, but I think that's just their biggest question mark. I don't think they'll be as good as they were last year. However, that doesn't mean that he's not going to be as good. Obviously, they brought in, Debo. I think they brought in Laramie Tunsil. So their offense definitely is improved. Um, Obviously, them getting rid of Brian Robinson as well could open up some more opportunities for him running. So we'll see how that goes. I see Metcalf here. Metcalf will be, I feel like people aren't sure about him as well. Obviously, he's the clear number one on Pittsburgh now. He's got Aaron Rodgers at QB. I believe he's in a good spot. I think it just comes to, I don't know. Like Pittsburgh style's very odd. So I wasn't really sure what to do with Metcalf. Um, but there's no reason he is the clear number one. They're playing in a division where they're gonna have to score points with Cincinnati and Baltimore. He's got Rodgers, so obviously we know they're gonna be passing a lot. So he is in a good position. Then we have Waddle. I think Waddle, everyone was kind of overlooking, just based on, draft history, with injuries and then with Tua's injuries, and he just kind of becomes like he'll start off good and then he'll kind of fizzle out. Um, but I mean, if they can all stay healthy, I mean, he probably ends up becoming a steal in this draft. And then I think Swift was great value here. He had a great year last year in Chicago. He comes in with the Ben Johnson offense. I'm going to say that for every Bears player here. Um, so I think Swift is a good pick to have here. Is he your RB2? Yes. Who did you have? I thought he was in your flex. Take a look. Oh, Bucky. What the fuck am I thinking? Yeah, didn't see Bucky at the bottom here. Um, so having him as a flex or, a third running back, definitely ideal. Obviously, I can see here you took Addison. He showed definitely big glimpses last year with Darnold. Obviously, he's suspended. So that'll just kind of be, a waiting game then. And Sean Junkins, still hasn't signed with Cleveland. They're even saying now, like, if he doesn't sign, he can go back to college or go in next year's draft. So we'll see how that pans out. And then I just see kind of, with the defenses here, we got Bateman, Wandale, Jaden Blue. Everyone's been keeping an eye on him, I feel like, just with the running back situation in Dallas. And even Tootin as well. I heard like he's got burners on him. So, and then obviously Bucky, who probably would have went round two this year. Obviously insane value as a keeper. So that was a great find last year. Um, so yeah, Gallego looking good as well. Honestly, when I look through all of these teams, we know how close last year was. I think there ended up, obviously, we say this every year with injuries, there definitely were discrepancies in teams, but just looking on paper right now, this is probably the closest a lot of our teams have looked. Um, so I honestly couldn't tell you right now who would probably be the six in. Um, so moving to my team, obviously Jamar was my keeper. Feel like that was a no-brainer. 127 catches last year. Explosive offense. Have to play from behind. It looks like a lot. Just no-brainer pick. Jacobs, I'm happy getting him and Kyron. I was kind of iffy on Kyron. It just seems like in that spot, I didn't think he would actually get there. So definitely happy with that pick. Um, two guys who get the majority of their goal line touches, playing, pretty good scoring offenses with head coaches with LaFleur and McVay. Terry McLaurin was someone that I honestly wanted to stay away from, but I didn't think he was going to get to me. Obviously, with how Mike Evans was falling, I wanted Mike Evans. Um, but it was all because of his contract and everything. Obviously, I don't think he'll repeat what he did last year with 13 touchdowns. I just feel like that was so unrealistic. But he's playing in another good offense, good QB. So was happy with the pick, especially as a wide receiver too. DJ Moore I was happy with as well because in between here, these are where I was looking to get Jalen Hurts. So you know, Ben Johnson offense, gonna say it again. No Keenan Allen taking away 127 targets. So offense should be more creative, should be more smooth. Hopefully Caleb, makes a leap this year. So looking forward to that. I'll take that as a wide receiver three. And then obviously I followed up with some, insurance with JMO. Obviously he's not the number one there. That would be St. Brown. But he was 1,000-yard receiver last year. I think people are starting to see his ceiling here. So I think he'll definitely be getting more involved, more so than just a downfield threat. I think they'll be looking to get him just the ball with his speed, whether it's quick yardage or, stuff like that. And then I fell back into the trap of last year. But obviously where they were taken last year is very different to this year when with Kelsey and Mahomes. I just feel like, Kelsey, he's old. I get it. He's like 35. He's still, I still think he's pretty good. I haven't seen any like mobility slow down with him. He still had 90 plus catches last year. He just didn't score as much. I'm okay with him being there, obviously, with Kittle gone, Hawkinson gone, Bowers a keeper, McBride gone. If those guys were going to be gone, that's who I was taking. Um, and then Mahomes, I feel like he can't get any worse than he has been in fantasy, especially the last 2 years were brutal. I feel like he just cannot be any worse than he was. Obviously, Hurts was my pick. I had thought about Daniels, but I don't know. I didn't really want to. I'd rather take another receiver there. Um, so it was between Mahomes and Baker. So I just wanted to go with Mahomes again. So I don't know. And then I followed up with a couple running backs. Warren, right now he'll start probably as RB1. I think he'll end up fizzling out to Caleb Johnson. I do think Warren is a good receiving back, especially in Rodgers, led offense. And then ETN, they got there's a Liam Cohen from Tampa Bay there as the head coach. Think he'll be able to, ignite something. And maybe that offense will get flowing again. And then I think Pittman's good with, I think he could end up being a good value pick because I think if he was with Richardson, there was no way in hell I was picking him. But with Daniel Jones, I don't think he'll be that bad. I think he'll be serviceable. And then just some other notable picks. We had Njoku, who I followed up with. I do like him with Flacco. Ramondre, I think he'll end up, giving the reins to Henderson at some point. Um, I took Stroud late. Then we have Mirando as I drop my phone. Miranda went with Gibbs round one, followed up by London, two good picks. Um, I think Gibbs finished as, a top three RB that last year, and that was with Montgomery having double-digit touchdowns. So take what you will. He's got the highest ceiling, I think. London as well. He ended up looking really good with Penix last year. He had his best year last year by far. And then Garrett Wilson, who I think a lot of people wanted to stay away from just because of how the Jets offense is being portrayed as, run heavy. Fields hasn't looked ideal passing the ball. However, Garrett Wilson is by far their leading receiver, should be getting, I don't even know how many targets. Um, does have familiarity with Fields. They both played at Ohio State. Um, yeah, so we'll see how that pick pans out. And then obviously, Miranda took my pick here that I'm pissed about. Hurts, you know, doesn't throw a lot of yards, doesn't have a lot of passing touchdowns, but he's going to have like 14 rushing touchdowns. Um, and that's the biggest appeal for him. And then Ridley, I think Ridley was a good pick. He's showed really good chemistry with Cam Ward this offseason. Obviously, he'll be their number one. I think it was a good pick. Pickens as well, just because I know I was looking at him in that round when I took Jameson Williams. Pickens going to Dallas, more explosive offense, that's for sure. Better QB play. Um, he'll be playing from CeeDee Lamb. So will that give Pickens more opportunity? I think in the red zone it might. So I think he could be in, a really good position in Dallas to see, maybe 7+ touchdowns, which would be good as a wide receiver too. So then we see Caleb Johnson here, who I would expect to take the reins in Pittsburgh a couple weeks in. Then we have Diggs, wide receiver one. Wide receiver one for the Pats, Drake May. Um, obviously he hasn't played in the preseason, so we won't know until week one. I'm not sure if Miranda will start him or not. Evan Ingram, I think that's a sneaky good tight end pick going to Denver. Um, they were kind of lacking at tight end last year. We've seen Sean Payton with Jimmy Graham, so he has good history with tight ends. So I think he'll be a good option for Bo Nix. And then just notable picks here as well. Uh, Joe Mixon, we know he's a minimum of 4 games right now. Could be more than that with him already being placed on the PUP list. Um, Javonte Williams is probably going to start out as the lead back in Dallas. I know that they have him, Jaden Blue, Miles Sanders, so we'll see how that goes. Christian Kirk in Houston as the wide receiver too, obviously with them unloading Diggs and Tank Dell probably, I think he is out for the year. Uh, so yeah, and then we have Achane here. Obviously, he would have been a round 2 pick, but this will be his last year being a keeper. So last year being a keeper for Achane, obviously he's dealing with some soft tissue injury, which could be, a little troubling. But there hasn't been major concern about him. So he should be good to go. Okay. Let's see here. Who we got? Brett next. So obviously we have Brett's 2 picks that we've already talked about here. Genty, supposed rookie phenom out of Boise. I still think he should have won the Heisman last year. Um, So Genty, Travis Hunter, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brett sticking with the Cardinals here. And then I think Mike Evans falling to Brett at 4. I was dying to get him if he had fell back down there. Breece Hall definitely dropped. I think people are just afraid of how last year played out, and I think people are afraid of Braylon Allen a little bit. I don't really think I think Breece Hall is a lot better. Um, but I don't know, just something about the Jets I don't like. So, and then I think Ibuka, he was probably gone a little too. I mean, I don't know. Just because in drafts I've seen he's gone later, but I think everyone kind of knows now how good he actually is. Especially with Godwin going to be out for a while. Same with McMillan. He might not even play. Um, So, Ibuka's already looking like the wide receiver 2 right now. And he's really good. And then Debo, from what I've seen Debo playing in the preseason, he hasn't looked bad. Um, so I'm interested to see him going from Shanahan to, over here with who do they have, like Dan Campbell. Just wondering how, that'll pan out. And then Aaron Jones should be starting as running back 1. Obviously, Jordan Mason is definitely going to start taking some touches. And then, as we know, with Aaron Jones potentially getting hurt, Jordan Mason will become an RB1. Then we have Scattaboo, who I think a lot of people are starting to think may take over at some point. However, Tyrone Tracy had a really good year last year. Um, so I don't really see why they would just like get rid of him. Well, not get rid of him, but I don't know. Then we have Shaheed, Brett's other go-to, obviously return yards. Um, play a factor into this league. He does make an impact there. He's also just, a one-play touchdown. But it'll be interesting because I feel like Carr was really good in that type of downfield threat. I don't know what they're gonna do with Rattler or whatever his name was, Shaw, or whoever their QB is gonna be. Cooper Kupp falling to round 11. That'll be interesting. Can he stay healthy? How are his targets going to look outside of the Rams? Now, obviously, Darnold playing QB. Um, JSN's their wide receiver 1. So different look for Kupp. He's playing for his hometown team, so we'll see how that goes. Nick Chubb, I mean, what Mixon out? Does Nick Chubb get the RB1 touches? Does, you know, I forget who the other one, Woody Marks, is that his name that Brett talks about? We'll get some of those touches now. Um, yeah, so we'll see what Chubb does. Obviously Bowers, great keeper there. He was tight end one going into the year. I know Brett likes Keshaun Nixon for return yards, gets to play at corner. Um, I know Brett picked Herbert. However, I'm pretty sure he dropped him for Kyler. Don't mind that just because of rushing, um, an offensive play style. And then Turpin. And then we have the iconic Harold Fannin Jr., who did have who did have a touchdown in the last preseason game. So then we come over to McGill. Obviously, the big shocker with keeping McCaffrey, followed up by Jonathan Taylor. So two really good running backs. Obviously, injury concerns in the past. But if they're healthy, man, I that's probably the best running back duo. Who else do we have for running back duos? Saquon and Bucky, Chan and Gibbs. All right, so we got some good running back duos. And then McGill obviously was dying for Josh Allen. Um, but McGill, in all honesty, like there is nothing wrong with you not getting Allen and then taking Taylor and then following it up with Lamar. So followed up by, like I said, with Lamar, who was by far the best fantasy QB last year with the rushing. He also had what, like 41 passing touchdowns. Unbelievable season. So then we had Devontae Adams going to the Rams. Like I said, if that offense is healthy, this dude could put up serious numbers, I think, in a McVay offense with Stafford healthy. Um, him and Puka, it's like a 1A, 1B. Um, so I really like that if they're healthy. And then I think Ted McMillan's a good pick. He showed really good glimpses. Um, He should be the clear-cut one in Carolina. Bryce Young definitely had improved play at the end of last year. They started to look like they were getting something going on offense. And then Montgomery, a safe, especially with him being your third running back, safe pick. He should have, 10 plus touchdowns this year. There's no reason unless the new OC wants to get Gibbs the ball a lot more. Could happen, but I think, Dan Campbell likes having that 1-2 punch. And then Zay Flowers, little mini stack there. Um, but I mean, just with that production that Lamar had last year and this dude only having like 4 touchdowns, like I don't understand. That's why I'm just not sold on Zay. Rome Odunze, another candidate for a big year. Like I said, Keenan Allen gone. He is the clear number two. He also can play in and out of the slot. As we've seen this preseason. So I like how he's looked. And I think he'll have a good year. So McGill followed up with a lot of receivers. We got Jaden Reed, who was, he started off the year last year really good, and then he kind of slipped a little bit. But then Shakir, he's kind of Allen's go-to. Um, So I think he's like a good flex play. And then we got Godwin who will be on IR. He was him and Rashee Rice were in the running for wide receiver one at some point last year. And then McGill's tight end was not taken into the last round. It was Kincaid. So that's still not a bad pick though. Rashad White could be interesting if Bucky were to go down. Um, so yeah, we got left Andrew went with CD and Puka. Definitely a good wide receiver punch there. both wide receiver ones. Um, I think both are in very good offenses. I think with Dallas, they're going to have to score a lot um, this year with their division and within that conference as well. If Dak can stay healthy, we've seen Dak was in, the MVP race, what was it, 2 years ago? Um, and did you get Dak as well, you bitch? Yeah, you did. Um, and then Puka, it just comes down to Stafford. I know Puka got hurt last year as well, but health is the big question here. But obviously, we've seen in the play, especially in the playoffs, um, how good he is. So yeah, nothing wrong with those two picks. Um, once I released that mock, and then he kind of pointed out, he was like, "You guys don't know what I'm gonna do third round." I started like after the mock, I started like thinking quarterback slash tight end. Um, so I think Kittle was a good pick, especially when you already had Chase Brown down the line. Taking a top tight end was a good move. We'll see how Chuba does. Obviously, Chuba had a really, really good year last year. They did bring in Rico Dowdle. I know that the OC, I forget his name, does like to have two running backs in the mix. I still think Chuba's by far, the better running back, just based off of production last year. But it will be interesting with Dowdle in the mix a little bit now. And then Worthy, that Chiefs wide receiver room was definitely something to watch here. Um, just because we saw how explosive Worthy became at the end of last year. And with Rice, potentially, I mean, he should be getting some sort of suspension. He is playing the first 4 weeks, but it will be interesting to see what happens if he gets suspended and how Worthy's production turns out. But obviously, he's your wide receiver three. I think Jerry Judy's a good pick as well. I think with Flacco, I don't know, something about Flacco in Cleveland. He just like, I don't know, he throws the ball like 40 times a game. Um, and I think Judy will definitely benefit from that. RJ Harvey, he's another one of those rookie running backs. He is like he's a small running back, like 5'10". Might have been smaller than that. Um, but I know they have J.K. Dobbins. But you draft a running back that high, he should be getting in. He's definitely a good receiving back from what I've seen, where Dobbins kind of lacks. So he should be a third down back out of the gate. And then I see Jordan Mason here, could end up getting a lot of touches in that backfield, especially with Aaron Jones's injury history. Then you have Chase Brown. We know him, RB1 in Cincinnati, another high scoring offense. Um, and then Baker Mayfield. Baker had what, 41 touchdowns last year. Um, that'll be interesting this year. I still think he'll be, I mean, especially where he was drafted, a good fantasy QB. Do I think he'll have that many touchdowns again? No, honestly, just because of them losing Liam Cohen at OC. Obviously, Godwin's going to be out for a while. Jalen McMillan, he's going to be out. And if you look, like McMillan had like 7 touchdowns over the last couple games last season, something like that. But obviously, with the Buka, you still got Mike Evans. We'll see if Mike Evans can stay healthy. Um, but I mean, having Dak as insurance is pretty ideal as well. I think he's definitely a dark horse at fantasy QB this year, just with how many times I think that they're going to have to throw the ball, just because I don't think they have a good running game right now. And obviously, you add Pickens to the mix. I see that as a good pick there. Do we have any notable Trey Benson, potentially maybe Keon Coleman? I know that Buffalo added Josh Palmer from the Chargers. We'll see how that goes. So now this will lead us to Japes. Obviously, we have Japes here picking Jefferson and Henry. Like I had said earlier, I think it comes down to his hamstring. I think McCarthy will be serviceable. I think he could actually be pretty good, just based on what we've seen Kevin O'Connell do with QBs like Sam Darnold, and even Kirk Cousins. I know Kirk Cousins, was a good QB, but I mean, he was putting up really good numbers. So, and then Marion Hampton. First round running back to the Chargers. We know Harbaugh likes to run the ball heavy. We saw what Dobbins did through most of last year. Obviously, with them signing Najee, it's kind of like you're not really sure. However, he did get hurt for like the 4th of July. Um, I think he should be good, but still, if you're drafting a running back that high, he should be, your starting running back. Um, and then Rasheed Rice, I think went earlier than we had thought, um, given the looming suspension at hand. Um, but obviously, with him playing, we saw what happened last year. He was on pace to put up an absolute monster year last year. Mahomes' go-to right now, um, even more than Kelsey. So, first 4 weeks, we'll see what happens after that. We don't know for sure. And then I think having Sutton followed up by that pick as well, I think he's gonna have a really, really good year. We saw what he did last year. Um, I think double-digit touchdowns isn't anything extreme going into this year, given his size frame. So really, I think that was a really good pick. And then Ricky Pearsall, who I know Brett was looking at. Um, I really like Ricky Pearsall. He should be wide receiver one right now with Ayuk out. We don't even know if Ayuk will be the same. Um, we have that offense. Purdy, they have McCaffrey, but in terms of receiving, it'll be Kittle, Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings. So see how that goes. Tyrone Tracy, I think that's a good serviceable, backup running back to have. I think he should stay the starter. I think he had a good year last year, given how trash they were. Um, Matthew Golden could be one of those picks. Um, you know, Green Bay's wide receiver room has always been a little, I don't know, like a carousel almost. They have Jaden Reed. They have, I'm pretty sure Watson's out. Um, Romeo Dobbs, I'm pretty sure he might be hurt. He might not even be on, I don't even know. I haven't even heard his name for like 2 years. Um, I mean, picking Matthew Golden in the first round should tell people something. So I think he will be the wide receiver one in this offense. So I think, getting him at that pick, great value. So Mark Andrews, serviceable tight end. He finished with 11 touchdowns last year. He kind of had a big second half of the year. And then we have Krosky Merritt. I mean, they traded B-Rob to the Niners. It's kind of a toss-up at running back there. I mean, wasn't he like a seventh round pick? They've heard good things from him out of camp. Obviously, with the Eckler still there, I expect Eckler to have the third down role still. Um, and then we have Dobbins. Do have Dobbins, I see here. Could potentially be starting out the year for Denver as the RB1. Then we have Burrow in the 12th round. Obviously, I mean, he's probably he's a top five fantasy QB. So getting him in round 12, followed by, let's see, Luther Burden could be an interesting role there in Chicago. B Rob could enter RB1 talk if CMC were to go down. Braylon Allen, Jerome Ford, Colson Loveland, I think is a sleeper pick here at tight end. James has got Najee as well as a handcuff, maybe. Um, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Okay, we're on to Ethan here. All right, so obviously um, Ethan definitely drafts a similar team to what he usually picks. Uh, we have Amon Ra. We'll have new OC there. Shouldn't stop him from getting over 100 catches a year. So I'm not really worried about him. One second. Then we have Josh Allen, obviously coming off MVP season. He had 40 total touchdowns, I think. Um, no explanation needed there. Then we have Kamara again. That offense, he's kind of just their focal point at this point. He's used in every way, receiving, rushing. I'm just concerned about how bad that offense is going to be, especially scoring wise, just with the QB play. So we'll see how that pans out. And I think a lot of people were shocked about the Kenneth Walker pick. I do believe he will definitely be starting out as RB1. I think that they're going to be in a more run-heavy offense there in Seattle. With Kubiak and then bringing in a new quarterback. But if he goes down and Charbonnet comes in, I don't know at this point now because Charbonnet he's been nipping at the heels now. So there could be a tipping point this year. But I think Pollard was a good pick. We saw what he did last year, especially with Spears on IR with that high ankle sprain, I think it was. He's in another really good spot going into this year. And then obviously we see here with Jacoby Myers. He was definitely a good serviceable receiver last year with Geno. Um, obviously we have or no, he wasn't with Geno, with Aiden O'Connell. So I think it'll be good this year with Geno. If he stays, obviously we saw the trade request come out. Little bit of concern there, just because I think he would do well with Geno, given how like JSN did last year, just in that type of role. So, and then we have Tyler Warren, who I think, some people were definitely looking at later on. Um, Definitely a big weapon coming into that offense. I was surprised when Chicago didn't pick him. Daniel Jones, I think, like I said, if it was with AR, I wouldn't like any of their receivers or offensive, weapons. But with Daniel Jones, I don't mind it. I think Warren will be in for a good year if he stays with Daniel Jones. And then Olave, like I had said, with that offense, I'm just not sure. He's definitely the wide receiver one, but he's had some injury concerns the last couple of years, and just inconsistent quarterback play. It looks like going into this year, we'll find out. Um, Obviously, I see TJ Watt here and Hutch. Lab McConkey, obviously, wide receiver one. We saw how explosive he became in the second half of last year in that offense. Um, and that's a great keeper there. I see here Jaden Higgins, who, could get an elevated role right off the bat, could compete for the wide receiver two spot with Christian Kirk. Who I see Demario Douglas here. Eckler will be an interesting pick. Um, Cedric Tillman. And that would lead us to Evan, last year's winner. Keeper was Brian Thomas in round 10. So starting off the bat, he just came out, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, two elite wide receiver ones going into this year. He's got three elite first round worthy wide receivers, followed up by James Cook, who we know had, 18 touchdowns last year. Do people think that will most likely happen again? Probably not. But he's an elite running back. Um, And then Travion Henderson, who I think a lot of people were hoping to get in this draft. Great receiving back, great third down back. Obviously, we've seen what he can do with return, so I wonder if they'll keep him in that role. And then he is a great runner as well. So I think he's definitely going to take over for Ramondre at some point. Um, just with Ramondre's ball security problems that have been ongoing, I don't think Vrabel will put up with any of that, especially with Henderson showing how explosive he can be. And then we have Devontae Smith, having that as your flex and fourth receiver, that's a great spot to be in. Um, we saw how good he is in throughout the playoffs. I think a lot of people are starting to believe that he could compete with AJ Brown in points. I don't think that's the case right now. Um, but that is definitely a great flex option to have. Then we have Laporta. Um, coming off that insane rookie year, he kind of fell into a slump last year. So we'll see how that goes with him with this new sort of, offensive coordinator. I think I'm not really sure about him, I'll be honest. I think the appeal is just the offense that he's playing in right now with how high scoring they've been. And then we have Bo Nix. He came on last year. They added more offensive weapons for him with Evan Ingram. They added, two running backs, where, they were kind of lacking last year a little bit in the run game. So I think Bo Nix is in for another good year. And then Charbonnet, like I said, if Kenneth Walker goes down, or even at some point if there's any issues, Charbonnet's coming in. He's taking over that role. We'll even say that he's already better than Walker. He just needs to get the playing time. And then we have Josh Downs, you know, being in that Indy offense, he'll benefit from Daniel Jones. I kind of like, the Colts offense a little bit this year. Um, and then obviously Brian Thomas Jr. with Jacksonville. We saw what he did last year with the two quarterbacks. So then I see Rico Dowdle, who joins that running back room in Carolina. Marvin Mims had some really big explosive plays last year for Denver. I know, especially in that Cincinnati game. Trey Harris, he's a rookie, right? Um, coming into, you know, I would say uh, a shallow wide receiver room, especially, Keenan Allen's up there in age. We know he's injury prone. Um, and then I see here Kareem Hunt down there. I obviously Will Anderson, Kirby Joseph, Jared Verse. Um, so yeah, so those are the rosters. I'm gonna go over everyone's kind of draft grade and what Yahoo's been saying. Um, and then we'll go from there. So obviously for me here, it gave me an A plus. I'll take it, I guess. The Brady Bunch drafts like a pro, but will they play like one? Let's see here what it says. Brady Bunch strutted into the draft like a peacock, strutting their stuff with an impressive A plus grade, projected record of 11-3. They clearly have their eyes set on the playoffs, aiming for the coveted second place finish. Wouldn't say that was coveted. Drafting third. All right, let's just go into it. Best draft pick, Patrick Mahomes. Didn't see that coming. Um, I mean, eighth round, I'll take it. Worst draft pick, DJ Moore. I mean, I said I reached on him a little bit. Playing the upside, went for a receiver that round. I don't know. I'm happy with that, I guess. Gligo also with the A plus. Captain Kirk came out swinging in the draft's A plus grade, having a 12-2 record. They're eyeing the top spot, drafting second. Best pick, Jaden Daniels, interesting. Worst draft pick, Quinshon Judkins, just because, I mean, obviously we don't even know if he's actually going to play. So that's interesting about Daniels. Mirando also followed with an A plus, 11-3. Best draft pick, Joe Mixon, interesting. Obviously we know he fell, but I think there's, the big concern on his health and how much time he's actually going to miss. Um, so that's interesting. And then it says Calvin Ridley was your worst pick. I did think you took him maybe just a little earlier than I had thought. But I don't think he would have made it back to you if you didn't pick him. And I still like how he's looked with Cam Ward. So Andrew came in with an A projected at 11-3. It says best draft pick, Baker Mayfield. Yep, that's a good pick. Round 10 with how his year had looked. Worst draft pick, Jerry Jeudy. I don't know if I agree with that. Um, Something about it's like with Flacco and then like Jameis. I don't know, these guys that throw the ball like 80 times a game. Um, I think Jeudy will benefit from that. We had Miguel come in with a C. Oh wait, this is Brett. Brett came in with the C. At 8-6, best draft pick, Breece Hall. He did definitely fall, um, below where I had thought. I think it's just their team as a whole. And then worst draft pick, it says Travis Hunter. Um, I mean, he's got a lot of value in my league, so we'll see how that pans out. Then we have Evan with a D plus. It says 5-9. I don't know if I believe that. Best draft pick Sam Laporta. Okay. Um, Interesting. And then worst draft pick Zach Charbonnet. Um, I don't think that's a bad pick at all. We have McGill came in with a D plus. McGill's best draft pick Lamar. Okay. Interesting. Um, Obviously he was number one last year, had the most points. So best draft pick, worst draft pick, it says Ted McMillan. Um, obviously we don't have a lot of data to back up how he is. So, wide receiver one, and it looked like an improving offense. So we'll see how he looks in there. And then we have Nihil, says a D plus. Um, Best draft pick, TJ Hawkinson. Um, you know, we've talked about that. And then Drake May coming in as the worst draft pick for Jack Nihil's team. I don't think anyone would agree with that being the worst draft pick because it's Drake May. So we know what Drake May can do. We had Ethan come in ninth. Best draft pick, Amon Ra. Interesting. That's an interesting one. And then worst draft pick, Jacoby Myers. I think Myers may have gone, a little early, but it wasn't anything crazy. And then Japes, well, we know Japes got an F because he didn't draft any defensive players, so that's why. Um, Best draft pick, Mark Andrews. Worst draft pick, Ricky Pearsall. Okay. 0-14. Well, that's because he doesn't have a defensive player in his lineup. Um, so those are the projected standings, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean anything. Um, I know we've already had some movement here in waivers. Let's see. Amari Cooper going to the Raiders. I mean, Ethan got him. Brecko McKyler. We had Dante Thornton Jr., Marcus Jones, Xavier McKinney, Ollie Gordon. So nothing crazy. I will definitely be doing, the week one predictions will come next week, probably next Tuesday. It's, I'll try to predict the who will be the six teams. I don't really know. This is like one of, I don't know. This year's all the teams are pretty good. I need to see all the rosters again. Oh boy. Okay. Let's see. I think I need to see it more like in the matchups, maybe. I need it more like visualized. Okay. 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 So six teams that I think just this, I don't know. I like my team. Obviously, I'm going to be biased. I feel like that's not unreasonable. Um, so me, I like Evan. I like Andrew. Um, and Japes. So that's four. I do like, I'm just concerned about some teams' health. Um, like for Ethan Walker and Myers, it's a little concern. But however, Josh Allen seems to always get to the playoffs for some reason. Um, Galigo's got a good roster. I'm just concerned on some of his players. I feel like it's just too close. Nihil's got a good one too. Uh, just from a health perspective, though, with Hill, Higgins, Miranda too. I don't know. I don't really have an answer, I'll be honest. I think this is probably going to be one of our more competitive years. I know that we have, last year it was all split between a game. Um, but in terms of looking at the rosters on paper going into the year, I think it's too close anyways. So, um, I don't, anyone could come in last, anyone can come in first. Obviously, that's how fantasy works, but in all honesty, with these rosters, um, I wouldn't even know who to pick. So that's gonna do it. Um, I think everyone has a good team. Um, Obviously, I think some drafted more well-rounded than others. But we're gonna have another fun year, another competitive year. Um, Obviously, draft day was, you know, feels like Christmas. So what do we got? We got 9 days before the first game, so everyone will lock in. It'll be good to, for me to actually be able to watch the games this year. Yeah, well, we're gonna be in for another fun year, another competitive year. See who takes home, the grand. Um, but draft day was a success. All the teams look competitive. So yeah, good luck to everyone. Week one video will come out probably next Tuesday, most likely. Um, Actually, yeah, the prediction one will come out probably next Tuesday. And then we'll take it from there. So everyone, good luck this season. And we'll see next week. Obviously, repping the Caleb jersey. Big year for him. Um, we'll see everyone next week for the week one prediction. Um, so peace.